So I was thinking about two characters from the Transformers franchise, Sandstorm and Snarl. I had toys of them when I was a child, and one of the things I remembered about them was that they were both desert specialists. I started to wonder if I could plan and pitch a Transformers comic about a squad of robots operating in the desert or on a desert planet, getting sand in their vents and machinery, having to battle against and utilise this environment in unique ways. This is the kind of idea that comes to me because two of my obsessions are, firstly, settings for fiction or poetry, in particular settings that are very limiting and harsh and which can easily slide into dreamscapes or have a figurative dimension to them. And secondly, raking over everything that at any point has made me feel a sense of awe and fascination, which includes childhood toys. In fact, I come back over and over to childhood toys and cartoons, not, I think, out of nostalgia, but because I believe, however foolishly, that there is a key to something in there somewhere. These are the sort of errant detective trails I find myself following. I've already tried a couple of times to find a way of adapting Transformers into poetry. Years ago I started a pastiche of the prologue to the Canterbury Tales, and oh my gosh, it turns out most of it is still online. More successful, I think, was the Mechamorphoses, for which I asked other poets to write transforming verse, where the second stanza was an anagram or other type of conversion or mirroring of the first stanza. At around the same time, the Emma Press were putting out a new call for submissions. I've really wanted to publish a pamphlet with the Emma Press ever since they started. I think they're an incredibly unique small press, aesthetically and tonally, and I really respect the work Emma Wright does at the helm. So I decided I would put something together to send them, and I would want it to feel specifically like an Emma Press book, not just a grab bag of the kind of thing I usually write, something that has its own internal coherence. So I scraped together a few of the half-written poems that were lying around in various folders and tried to work out if there was any way of building something out of them, some way they could be amalgamated, while also thinking about making room for my robot in a desert scenario. Now, this is usually the point in the writing process when either nothing happens at all, because the various ingredients simply don't like each other, or else something begins to emerge, but usually in answer to a different question to the one I thought I was asking. And in this case it was an idea for a town or a settlement that was half buried in sand, where all the local people had not only learned to deal with and accept this entombment, but had become priests or acolytes of a sort of sand cult. Living in a world of sand had become part of their identity, and the sand has come to mean or to stand for so many different things that there are these absurd contradictions. So, for instance, it's smuggled in and out of the town, and everybody takes this very seriously, even though the sand is everywhere and there ought to be absolutely no reason to move it and no way to prevent someone taking it from the outskirts. Sandsnarl was the name I chose for the settlement and the pamphlet, and I decided that the experience of reading it should be a little like encountering a strange new location in a role-playing game, say. You know, where something is evidently wrong and you're not sure that it isn't a little dangerous to hang around. But also at the same time, I wanted it to feel like a sort of musical variety show or review where different characters take turns introducing themselves. I'm interested in finding ways for books and poetry publications in particular to be hybridic, to be a kind of meeting point between different traditions of composition. And I'm also interested in ways of suggesting a space that can be charted or explored in conjuring fictional or mythic worlds without relying on the usual conventions of fantasy fiction. One of the ways of doing that is to treat individual poems as portraits so that you are building up a cast or a miniature population. And here's the end result. It has richly evocative ink illustrations by Emma Wright. And I'm going to read the poem which was the culmination of all my thinking about robots in deserts. And you can see that in the end it's all boiled down to something very simple. The robot has become a sort of vessel or a ship to be piloted, and the poem is really about the relationship between the robot and the pilot. So this is called The Roboteer Hesitates on the Cusp Before Easing Herself at Last into the Cab of Her Golem. Gently quaking, her flight suit a half-sloughed snakeskin, she sinks amid cables and instrumentation. This is her girl, this poor machine, once agile, whose radiator now begins to gurgle. Sand in the intakes, sand in the joins of panels and joysticks, crackling as she runs preliminary diagnostics. Then, each raises the other's stiff engine from its stasis. Her fingers dance across gamuts of indicators. Heat and a hum to hold the pair in equilibrium. She wears her summoned sweat like healing balm.